All this week, as you know, we've been looking at the state of the region's roads. Today we're focusing on pollution levels. Figures for 2010 show that across the northwest almost 3,500 people died prematurely as a result of pollution, and Greater Manchester is routinely exceeding recommended limits for air pollution despite introducing measures to reduce harmful emissions.
Well, in a moment we'll be speaking to a doctor to find out how harmful pollutants can be to our bodies. But first, our environment correspondent Judy Hobson has been out testing the air we breathe.
Vehicles are the biggest source of our air pollution, but despite tougher regulations, harmful levels remain high across the region and it's affecting our health. Figures from the Department of Health show that in 2010, nearly 3,500 people died prematurely due to pollution in the northwest. 219 were in Manchester and 239 in Liverpool. But there are so few monitoring stations, we don't know how high levels really are. Oxford Road is one of Manchester's busiest routes. Professor Hugh Coe, a pollution expert, has agreed to test what's in the air here.
So what we're looking at are particles in the atmosphere. These are tiny little particles, less than 10 microns in size. It's about 10 times less the width of a human hair. They affect our lungs, they affect the way our heart functions.
These tiny particles come mainly from diesel engines.
So what's the reading now?
So we're reading something like 50 to 60 microgram per cubic metre.
That's the maximum limit, but it has to stay high for an hour to break safe levels. Today it didn't.
How often does Manchester break the legal limits then for this sort of
It's
emission?
broken once or twice this year already. Oxford Road just further
We're not even out of January, we've already broken the legal limits twice.
Yeah, that's right.
He says last year the city exceeded the safe limit for particulates 25 times. It also broke limits for nitrogen dioxide 60 times. That is a poisonous gas that can affect our lungs, and road congestion makes it worse.
This is the M60 in Trafford. Now, last year, parts of that route were the most congested in the country. So what does that mean for people living here and for schools like this one?
According to government figures, Kingsway Primary was in an area which was the 9th most polluted in Britain in 2014. Trafford Council says the levels are still within legal limits and parents shouldn't be alarmed. But environmental campaigners say more must be done. One local group is doing its own air monitoring.
So toxic air defences and pollution prevention. So that's the area we really need to make strides with. And it's going to take people in positions of responsibility and resource to be able to make those big changes.
Transport for Greater Manchester has the job of cleaning up the air here. They wouldn't do an interview, but said while particulate levels in Greater Manchester have met EU air quality objectives for several years, they can still have significant impact on health, and so we are committed to reducing vehicle emissions and improving air quality as a whole. They are working on a plan to cut pollution levels, but like many UK cities, Manchester won't meet European targets on nitrogen dioxide until 2020. Judy Hobson, BBC North West Tonight, Manchester.
We can speak to Dr Simon Taggart now, who's a respiratory specialist at Salford Royal. Thanks for coming to speak to us. So we heard that some 3,500 deaths are attributable to pollution in the northwest. That's a very alarming figure. Who should be concerned about pollution?
It doesn't affect everybody. Those people with pre-existing cardiorespiratory disease are greatest at risk. So those people with asthma, COPD, but also heart disease. They're the ones that should be worried about air pollution.
That's a lot of people, isn't it? Asthma and pre-existing heart problems. Anyone that's listening and is concerned, what can they do to protect themselves?
Make sure you keep up to date with your medication and your prescriptions. Follow the pollution forecasts. When the pollution levels are high, they should consider staying indoors, closing the windows and monitoring the air pollution.
How about people who are otherwise healthy? Do they need to worry about air pollution?
The vast majority don't, but those people who are fitness enthusiasts and like to exercise outdoors, they are at risk, in fact, of photochemical pollution in the summer, because that can cause high levels of ozone and that can cause restricted breathing, painful breathing and breathlessness. And that occurs in about a third of healthy athletes.
children is the other element. In Julie's package there, we saw a case study of a primary school that's very close to a motorway. What do we know about the impact of pollution on development in kids?
We don't know enough. These children are living next to a toxic mix of pollutants. The long-term effects we don't really know a great deal about. We know that living next to motorways and in cities is bad for your health, and it can increase your symptoms from asthma. But whether it will cause other health effects, growth or intellectual ability, or perhaps even cancer rates, is yet to be proven. But it is a great concern.
Over your career as a respiratory specialist, as we've seen car use increasing and pollution increasing, have you seen a correlation between that pollution and the kind of hospital admissions that you look after?
That's very difficult to answer because in hospital patients come to see us for a number of different reasons. In the wintertime they often have a coexistent viral infection, and teasing out whether the viral infection has been exacerbated by the air pollution can be very difficult. But we do know that there are certain days when the air pollution is very high, when there's no other good reason why someone's been admitted to hospital, and under those circumstances I do blame the air pollution for their hospital admission.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Dr. Taggart, for coming to join us today.